Well, welcome everybody to this Conscious Cafe Global session, which in our time zone is taking place in the morning. We've been talking about how cold it is, but I can see in many windows the sun is coming through the window, so it feels good this morning. We're recording this today, so anybody who's joining us seeing the recording, and we put all the recordings of the sessions that we do up on our Conscious Cafe YouTube channel. Conscious Cafe is something that was started 9 years ago by ex-publisher Judy Piatkas, who's with us this morning, and it was a place of community started in London for us to come together in conversation, talk about things that matter, and through those conversations and connection, make our contribution to raising consciousness in the world. And the powerful conversation we've got this morning is definitely going to contribute to that. We have a number of groups that are outside London now. I run the one in Skipton on the north, and we have, I don't know, 9 or 10 other groups outside the UK as well, in France, Geneva, Singapore, that's it, Singapore and Italy. So we're moving around the world. We've got a number of great events that we're also hosting through the rest of October and November, and I'll announce those at the end. But for now, I'm going to start with our conversation today. And I'm going to welcome Phil Clothier. Phil, you're only down the road, aren't you, in Lancashire?
Yeah, I live in Rossendale, so about 20 miles north of Manchester.
Yeah, so not too far away from in Skipton. In fact, we originally planned for this session to be live up in the north, but obviously numbers have changed and we weren't able to do that. So here we are together, gathered, all the places that we're gathered. And Phil works with the Barrett Values Centre. We've had Richard Barrett come on one of our calls and do a fantastic presentation. And Phil is part of the team. He used to be the CEO. And what the Barrett Values Centre is an international organisation currently working through a consulting network in over 100 countries, so truly global. He works with leaders to bring about values-based, ethical and sustainable transformation. Prior to that, he had careers in social housing and in IT. He's worked with corporations, governments and NGOs around the world and been an advisor on national values assessments in over 25 countries. And in particular, Latvia, Sweden and Iceland have used the results of values assessments and have been instrumental in reorienting public policies. So he works far and wide. I've known Phil. I actually think I've known Phil from before he joined the Barrett Values Centre all those decades ago. And I know him to be, he actually lists his values here as core values of compassion, trust, humour, fun and love. Very much a community person. He talks about himself being active in his community and an active picker up of litter. And I know that to be true of Phil in all the years I've known him. Strongly a community host, a tremendous leader of this huge international organisation. So it's fantastic, Phil. Welcome and thank you for joining us this morning. And I'm now just going to introduce, as I hand over to Phil, exactly what we're going to do. Phil, when all this changed in March, I won't say spring in case people are listening in the Southern Hemisphere, but when the world changed very quickly in March with the pandemic and really almost a global shutdown, lockdown, Phil launched a global values assessment at the Barrett Values Centre, and he hosted a really interesting call that I joined and presented the results of this survey. And very quickly, I think about 6 weeks into it, he'll explain, kind of testing the water of change. And he reported back really significant, rapid change. And I'm particularly interested in values. So I just thought this was fantastic because what he was pointing out was there's a shift as a society, as the world moves in the direction of being, well, I could say a better world. And what he was saying was that the shifts that he saw in a few weeks would really perhaps take 6 or 7 years. So something was happening very quickly. I don't know whether you have all done your values assessment on the Barrett website. It doesn't matter that if you haven't, and you can, there's a link here for you to do it. But we thought this would be a really interesting conversation this morning for him to talk about how the centre has been monitoring this shift in values and for you to compare that to yourselves. And that's the conversation we're having this morning, and we're all on mute. So we're going to welcome Phil And so, Phil, welcome. Thank you so much. And I'm going to hand over to you now.
Thank you, Gina.
Okay, so I'm a storyteller, and everything I'll be sharing this morning is really through stories to share what we've been doing, and that we're going to range from everything from what does it look like from national and community assessments to in organizations, but most importantly, what does this mean for us personally? And I'll tell you a few of my stories as well, and we'll have the chance to work together. We're going to go into breakout groups during this, so we can work together in smaller groups and really explore our values and what's been happening during COVID times with our values. So I'm going to share my screen now.
Oh, I think I've just shared the wrong one. I'm going to stop share and do that again. And share that one instead. Can everyone see that? You can. Okay. So, just so you know, our children are older now. My daughter's a doctor. My son works for an electricity company. And so during lockdown, we didn't have all the challenges that other people had of having to do homeschooling. But 2 weeks ago, we welcomed our new little puppy, Oscar, into our house. And I've now learned what it would be like to be in a lockdown situation with a baby and having all those responsibilities. And so you might hear Oscar during this call. We'll see. he might make his voice known. But so let's go on to the core thing that we're really going to be exploring. This idea: we value what we need. And what happens is that as life conditions change, and life conditions always change, we might fall in love, or we might get a new job, or we might lose our job, or a loved one dies, or all sorts of things happen. And then our needs will change, and then our values and priorities shift in order to match with that. And that's really the central idea that we'll be exploring during this. And what we've seen, what we saw at as the pandemic was announced by the World Health Organization, I would say is probably the most dramatic shift in values that we've seen probably since the Second World War. And I'll show you some of those results. And by the way, this presentation I'm sharing now and the larger full presentation of the COVID survey we did, all of that material we've put in the public domain. And so any of these slides, you don't need to copiously write notes because you can have any of these slides that you want. I'll send them off to Gina afterwards. Gina beat me to it, which is wonderful because I was going to make sure we all took a deep breath, but let's just move on. But continue breathing. Just continue noticing your breath as we're talking, because that always helps. I'm going to start with one of my favorite stories. This was a few years ago. We were working with a client, a very large chemical manufacturing client, and we were doing culture work with them. And we got to a point where they were extremely late in paying their invoices. And we wrote to them to say, come on, chaps, what's happening? It's really fair that you pay us now. And we got a note from them to say, listen, we're really sorry about this. We're doing our best. We'll get back to you soon. There's a lot of bureaucracy in this organization. And so I got that note. And now I just want you to read the email chain that happened after that. So I wrote back to them to say, and then just nod when you've read. So I know that I can just see a few nods you've read. And then I got this response. So this was from Rita's boss, John. And then nothing happened for about 2 weeks. And about 2 weeks later, I got this message from Rita. Now, this is a little bit of a longer read. Just a nod when you finished. Yeah. Okay. And then finally, Rita's boss wrote back. So the reason I share that is because even in a situation which is a very kind of gritty, probably nasty business situation, like collecting overdue invoices, which not many of us enjoy, we can bring our values into that, and we can choose how we want to show up within that, and actually take a situation that's difficult and challenging to something that celebrates humanity and creates a very loving outcome. And honestly, I didn't know when I wrote Love Phil at the end of it, I didn't know what the outcome was going to be. I didn't know this was going to unfold. But what I've learned over time is that however we chose to show up, if we want trust, then demonstrate trust. If we want respect, then demonstrate respect, and just put that out in the world. And that's the world that will reflect itself back to you. So whatever we value, then I guess Gandhi put it best: be the change you want to see in the world, and that's what you're going to experience. And I have to tell you, I'll tell you a story in a little bit. That's not always easy. And sometimes we get incredibly challenged around that. And so I'm suggesting something that sounds really easy and obvious, and often it's not, because we're human beings and we have stuff that's going on inside, and we get frustrated and we get angry and we get upset. And then it becomes much more difficult to really connect with those core things of our essence inside. So I'm going to take a moment for us. We're going to break up now, and we're going to go for maybe we're going to break into groups of 3. I think that's right, Gina. And with these 2 questions, and if you want to take a picture of the screen or just write these down, but what are you most grateful for today? And what do you need most today? It's a bit of a leading question, because this comes back to this theme that we'll be exploring during this session. What are you most grateful for? And what do you need most today? And if you could we'll take 5 minutes in groups. And so just take a minute or so each, and then you've got a little bit of time to just chat about that with each other as well. Okay. So are you ready to, you lead that, Gina?
Phil, I'm going to give them a notice at 4 minutes, which
okay.
is 1 minute left. So then we have a 5-minute session.
Perfect.
Break out rooms, break into 3. There might be 2 in your room.
Okay.
3. Okay. Assign into rooms, 5 rooms, break out rooms. Let's change the format. Open all rooms. Okay. Okay. Everybody's selection will come up. You're not joining a room, Diana? You all right?
So we've just had a
Are we all back?
remarkable experience. Yes, go on, Gina. Do you want to lead this part of any reflections or?
Well, I think, well, I don't know how many groups we had. You asked me a different question to normally, so I don't know how many groups we had, but maybe somebody wants just to take less than a minute just to summarize how different everything was or how much the same in their little conversation. Anybody wants to step forward and speak on behalf of the 2 or 3 of you? What resonated as the same or what might have been different? A minute.
I'm happy to share.
Oh, Elodie, lovely.
Hi,
Yeah.
Elodie.
Yeah, actually, we were quite similar on the way out. Where we are in a point of reinventing ourselves, finding the way to the new future, and really looking at what we can let go and the inspiration for the new day. So I hope Gina, I resume it.
Perfect. I was obviously in that group. Wonderful, thank you. Next group.
Well, I'll say something, although the other people in my group can say it as well. I just wanted to say that I was felt gratitude really, that I managed to extricate myself from a rather sticky situation in London and ourselves, if you like, and find this this place where there's a lot of freedom to rethink and re-energize, and lots of in touch with nature. It's really beautiful here, and that I suddenly realized how powerful that is, and I didn't before because I was right in the middle of London, and even though they've got parks, it's not the same.
Yeah, thank you.
Wonderful.
Anybody want to just do a quick summary from their group? I didn't brief you beforehand, but it doesn't take much prep. Just a sharing. Diane, are you speaking? Because we are muted. Oh, maybe I unmute you. I'll ask to unmute, okay?
Yes.
Got you. Yeah,
Okay.
go on, Diane.
Okay. Our group, I would say, I mean, I said lovely to be, I'm grateful for being alive, but that was followed on from another lady who said, I think Louise was her name, who said that she's really enjoying being in a new house. It sounded very similar to that lady who just spoke, being out of London, and she's in Hove. It's lovely. I can imagine it's just lovely. And I can only say my bit because it covers for everyone. All you need is love. I mean, needing help with technology, it might be all our technology. I've got 2 things in front of me. I've got my computer and the phone, which is why I'm having to zoom, you know, change over to, it's a bit of a nightmare. Judy, explain. Mercury in retrograde. Communication, technology is playing up. But yeah, grateful for love, basically. Grateful to be alive.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
I think that's a perfect summary. Should we
Yeah,
leave it there? Yeah.
Lovely.
Okay, good.
Thanks,
Thank you,
everybody.
everyone.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Good. So I just wanted to say a little introduction about me as part of this story. These are pictures of me with my family when I was young. When I was born, my parents were running children's homes, and I actually had over 350 foster brothers and sisters. And there was usually between 10 to 20 children in the house at any time. And so as part of that, as a kid growing up, I saw a huge amount of human suffering. All the children that were coming from broken homes and sickness and difficult situations and needed care. And so on one side, suffering, on the other side, a lot of love. My parents, you can see in the top left there in that wonderful picture with my mum jumping off onto the sand dunes with us. Their way was, as soon as somebody comes into our home, then they're part of our family and they need as much love and care and attention as anybody else. And that was kind of the core principle that I took through my childhood. And after this children's home time, Gina mentioned, I then went into social housing and then into the IT world. And in the year 2000, I was given a copy of a book called Liberating the Corporate Soul by Richard Barrett. And it opened up the world of human consciousness and values in a way that I had never known or understood. And I felt I felt that my soul was opening at that moment, and to the work that then lay ahead of me. And I thought that was it. I thought that was how everything worked, until I was leading the Barrett organization for 10 years. And about 5 years ago, I had a very dramatic burnout breakdown. I was traveling all over the world. I was working long hours, and I thought because of the work I was doing, I'd be protected, and that didn't happen. And I took a whole year off to recover, and then I come back, and I'm slowly, gradually have my practices to continue to build peace inside. And a few days ago, it was World Values Day, and I put this up as one of the pictures I posted. I value peace, so I will continue my inner practices to calm my mind every day. Because I've really come to understand that for the rest of my life, there is nothing that I value more than my own inner peace. And I have my practices now. I found some wonderful people that are guiding and supporting me through the process of healing and finding peace, and things are unfolding beautifully. It's a gradual process, I have to say. I have not discovered any quick fixes with this, but so I come back to, we value what we need. And through that process, it became vastly clear to me that I moved extremely far away from peace. And so peace became my number one priority by far. And that's what, for the moment, will that change in 2 years, 5 years time? Maybe. But I now see that for the rest of my life, I've committed to my own process of inner peace. So let me start with a few stories of this work. This is an organization, or actually this is a community. Most of the work we do, I'd say 95% of the work we do is with organizations, but this is a story of a community in the Northern Territories of Australia. This is a community that had 150 years of government intervention, the government doing good things, if you like, to try and fix the community, which had resulted in huge levels of alcoholism, drug addiction, most people out of work. There was a safe house in the community because there were very high levels of family violence that were going on there. And we were asked to do a values assessment of this community. And a brilliant consultant from Australia, Annalise Jennings, took this on. And she didn't go to fix them or to tell them what to do. Her job was to simply be a catalyst and support them in discovering their essence, what they valued most, and how they wanted to bring that back to life in their community. And over the course of 3 years, we saw miracles happen. So in 3 years, we saw a 60% increase in employment, 80% reduction in children attending the safe house. And you can read the numbers here. And in fact, it's gone on to be an example now where in the Northern Territories, this is an example of how the government support the communities in healing themselves based on their values, rather than trying to put interventions in to try and fix people. We've also measured this in relation to the impact it's had on the Sustainable Development Goals, because we can see that the impact that they're having locally also has global impact as well. My final little story here is that about a year after getting these numbers, I had a call from Annalise to say that they've actually closed the safe house now. There is no longer any need, that there are no mothers or children who are in any fear of violence, family violence anymore. So they don't need that safe house, which I thought was a beautiful outcome. Here's another one. This is, Gina mentioned this in the introduction. One of the nations, we've worked with the government here. This started with the chief executive of a bank saying that he wanted to transform his bank, and the transformation of the bank, his view of that was about love. He needed to bring love to the bank. And over the course of a couple of years, the transformation of the bank was so profound, the owner of the bank, who was the government, said, how have you done this? How are you creating such amazing results, such love from the customers, such care of your people, such financial success? And the chief executive of the bank said, well, we're doing this work. And the government said, is it possible to do this for a nation? And so we did the first statistically valid survey of a country, the country of Latvia. And the government used these results these are real pictures of the dialogue sessions over 18 months in the nation to find out, well, what does caring for the elderly look like? What does financial stability look like? What does caring for future generations? What would we need to be? How would the government need to operate in order to put those conditions in place? And what they created was the Sustainable Development Strategy of Latvia until 2030, which it covers housing, transportation, education, childcare, all of those things for the first time consciously based on the core values of the people. So the first time in modern European history that they've created the entire policy of the nation based on the values of the people. Now, is Latvia perfect and fixed and all running like clouds? And absolutely not. It's a process, it's a journey, it's baby steps, it's gradual, but they've made that commitment to these steps. Last thing is, on this one, we saw a divide between Latvians living in Latvia and Russians living in Latvia. So this social divide, and that was happening on the streets. There was violence happening on the streets. What we actually discovered in the results is what they desired for the future was almost exactly the same. And so this is a picture here of a group of Latvian kids and Russian kids who are sat together thinking about how they could create the community they want for the future, again, based on the core values that they're shared by, or they share, rather than the beliefs that divide them. So I'm going to briefly introduce you to the work, and then we'll bring it back down to the results of the COVID survey, the COVID values survey we did, and then we'll look at your personal values. We'll do some work with that. So typically, when we're working with a corporation or a nation or a community, we ask 3 questions. Select your personal values. And now, for those of you who've done the personal values assessment, that's the same question. Select the values that most reflect who you are, not who you desire to become. On the full survey, we asked 2 other questions. Select the values that most reflect how your organization or your nation currently operates, and select the values you would desire for your organization or nation or community to achieve its highest potential. And so it's very simple. We just ask those 3 questions, and from those results, we have a starting point for dialogue. So we don't go to people and say, we've got the answer, we can tell you what to do. We say, we understand now what people's priorities are. Let's talk about how collectively we can put that into action. Now, here's 2 real organizations. These are actually both in the financial services sector in North America, working under exactly the same conditions, same market conditions. On the left-hand side, when we asked the employees, select the values that reflect how your organization operates, they said the number 1 thing we have is client satisfaction, and then making a difference, and then integrity and teamwork. And you can read the words here. Each word gets a dot on the chart. So financial stability is as that level 1 viability dot, and customer satisfaction is that level 2 relationship dot. And so all I need to tell you for the moment is that a spread across the levels is a good thing. At the bottom of the model, 1, 2, and 3, we're looking at how you create a good foundations, solid, healthy foundations inside the organization. At 5, 6, and 7, we're looking at how the organization makes a positive contribution to society or the environment. And level 4, that evolution one in the middle, is this process of continuous transformation, continuous evolution that happens. And so this is an organization that has a positive distribution of dots across the levels, which is really what we consider to be a very healthy situation. But let me also say that higher is not better in this model. That if we only had values up at levels 6 and 7, and we weren't taking care of level 1, which is really about our financial health and our physical health, then we might not survive very long. So we've got to take care of all these things. On the right-hand side, you see Organization B, where the employees said the number 1 thing that we experience is blame, and then short-term focus, and then internal competition and buck passing and risk averse. And you can see the white dots with the red circles around them. These are what we call potentially limiting values. They're things that get in the way of having engaged employees, happy and loyal customers, and the organization delivering on whatever its mission and vision is. In fact, two white dots is enough to already tell us that there's something like undermining and unhealthy going on here. In a culture like this, I would say this is a toxic culture where we will see far greater incidence of both physical and mental sickness amongst the employees, because this is a place you just don't want to go. You can imagine Organization A on a Monday morning, people would probably jump out of bed and say, yes, it's time to go to work. On Organization B, they're probably going to, like when the alarm goes, they're going to like put their head back under the duvet and say, I can't possibly go to work today. That's just such a horrible place to be. And we see there's no particular patterns of, is this just government or is this just corporations or whatever? Actually, the core pattern is the consciousness of the leaders creates the culture that we see inside of here. Here's another real story. This is an organization, and I think you can tell already that if you look at the current culture of this organization, things weren't running well. They were in trouble. And actually what we see time after time is when the culture gets into this level of trouble, then financially they start to get into trouble as well. And the leaders got really frightened, and they thought that the thing they had to do was to put more controls in place. And one of the controls he wanted to put in place was to put a time clock system in. So literally making, like, you've got to be at your desk on time, and you must not leave your desk until the right time. During the workshop, one of the leaders looked at the personal values of the people, and he said, what the hell are we doing? He said, our people stand for honesty and reliability and integrity and trust. And we're just about to put this system in place that tell them we don't trust them. And there was this huge aha moment in the organization, in the leadership team, to say, you know what, we were about to make a big mistake. And that was the foundation. That was the turning point of the leaders talking to their employees and saying, we didn't understand who you were. We didn't understand what was really at your core essence. Let's talk about that, and let's start to rebuild based on that. And it took them 2 or 3 years actually to move past this crisis, but they did. So I can't guarantee you that these things are instantaneous fixes. This takes time, and it takes tenacity, and it takes huge courage. But that's why I'm so interested in this left-hand list, the personal values of the people, because that's where the magic is. Because our job is to go from the current culture, this middle picture, to the desired culture, but we do that in a way that honors who our people are. And that, to me, doesn't matter whether it's we do this in a family, or we do it across a corporation, or we do it in a nation. That's the same dynamic. It's the same magic that when we understand who our people are and what's most important to them, their personal values, then we can start to have new dialogue and create connection and healing at a level that is frankly remarkable. But it takes courage. So I'm really not going to say much about the model. We have a lot of stuff published. And in fact, if you look at our website today, we're even evolving the titles on the left-hand side. So you can see survival, relationship, self-esteem, transformation, and you can see the sort of meanings we have around those. But basically what we do is that when you pick the values, we're going to assign them to a level. So the value, for example, of innovation is we see as a transformational level 4 value, or the value of honesty and integrity. We see that as a level 5 internal cohesion. What is it that bonds us together? And so we allocate all of the values to the levels. And when you get your report, you will see that you've got the values that you've picked will be assigned into these levels. And if you want to dig a little bit deeper into this, then we've got plenty of materials on our website that you can dig into the model. But for now, I'm just going to leave that there because the stories, I think, are more important. The last thing I want to say is regarding the model, you'll notice that in the results you saw, there were limiting values like blame, manipulation, control, hierarchy, greed, corruption, all those sort of things. And they come from levels 1 and 2 and 3, which is really where within the model, this is where the ego operates. And we can have a healthy expression at levels 1, 2, and 3. So financial stability and health and respect and positive relationships and those sort of things. But we can also have the unhealthy aspect. And what we've boiled this down to is that there are really only 3 core fears where all of these things come from. At level 1, which is really about that viability survival level, the core fear is, I do not have enough. At level 2, which is about relationships, the core fear is, I am not loved enough. And at level 3, which is really about self-esteem and performance, the core fear is, I am not enough, or I'm not good enough. And I wonder how many of us have ever had any of those thoughts or fears coming up in their life. I'll be very transparent. My 2 biggest ones within this are, I'm not loved enough. So I have done a lot of stuff in my life to ensure that I'm liked and loved. And it wasn't until I understood this that I was able to say, okay, I can see where my behaviors are coming from now in order to fulfill that need. And I'm not enough, or I'm not good enough. Frankly, even for this call today, because I don't consider myself to be an expert, I'm a novice student of this work because there's so much to learn. And even to present today, I had that moment of, oh, can I do this? So even now, after 20 years of doing this work, these thoughts, they're part of the ego that is very deep within me. They come up. And so, as I said, I do not have enough. I do not have enough money, safety, protection, health, food, etc., to satisfy my need for survival. I'm not loved enough. I do not have love, caring, attention to satisfy my need for belonging. And I'm not enough. I do not have enough power, authority, respect to satisfy my need for self-esteem. And I would contend that every other fear or subset of fears that we have actually comes from these 3 things. So that is just a short introduction to the model and what's behind it. What I'd like to share with you now is what Gina alluded to, that 6 weeks after the World Health Organization announced this as a pandemic, we launched this global COVID culture assessment. And if you go to valuecentre.com/COVID, we have made all the resources for this completely public domain, so that anybody can take advantage of this and look at, what does this look like in the mining industry or in the banking industry, or what does this look like in North America, so we can look at the various patterns. So we actually asked 4 questions in this. Your personal values, which is the one you've done. What was the culture like before COVID? So remember 6 weeks ago. What is it like now? So what are you actually experiencing in your organization today? And what would you desire for your organization to recover and thrive after COVID-19? Now, we all know that that's a very naive question. It's extremely naive, because what does after COVID-19 mean? Is this going to be 6 months, a year, 5 years, forever? I mean, we're still discovering that. But what we're wanting people to do is to start to explore, whether we're in COVID times or not, what choices they want to make for what was being called the new normal at that time. And so we actually had, in statistics terms, a statistically valid sample of people from around the world, in different positions in organizations, from different regions of the world, from different generations. We looked at things like gender. Were people key workers? Were they working from home? A vast number of different demographics that we did. And I don't have time to do all the details. I'm going to show you some very brief headlines. This is really the key that we saw, and Gina already mentioned this, that we typically, when we start work with an organization, we would often say that when you've got clear commitment from the leaders and they're willing to do their own inner work and lead this transformation, expect to start to see like a turnaround within 5 to 7 years. You can expect to see good results within the first year, but it's going to take time to keep this going. But that happened in 6 weeks, which for me was a miracle to see. Some of the things that we have been working with organizations to visions of where they might be in a few years' time happened almost overnight. And so from a personal values perspective, what we looked at was the big patterns we were seeing before COVID-19 on the left-hand side, and then during COVID-19, the green words are the new priorities that have come into place, making a difference. And I would say making a difference and caring are those external expressions of like how my sense of compassion for others, how I care for others. Well-being is really about how I care for myself. And then adaptability, clearly, we're in totally different times, and we've got to figure out how we make the best of where we are right now, how we live in these new conditions. Now, on the left-hand side, honesty, respect, trust, and integrity, they dropped off the top 10. Does that mean they went away? Does that mean people no longer value trust, or they no longer value integrity? No, it doesn't mean that. It just means that people's priorities changed in that moment. So there were new things that hit the top 10 because this is what we needed, or these people at least needed in that moment in order to create internal stability and external equilibrium. So how I am, how I create peace for myself internally, and how I create connections with the world that I experience. So that was from a personal perspective. From an organizational perspective, what we saw was a breaking down of, I would say, 150 years worth of the industrial age style of organization. So industrial style organization, performance control and hierarchy. I'm the boss, you go and do what you're told, and you do it when I say. And what we saw was a shift to something that was far more human. And leaders shifted into people-focused working together. And again, that word adaptability. And this sense of humanity emerged to say, well, what do you need? What do you need in order, now you're working at home? And you've got to be with your pets and your children, and we still need you to do your work, but how can we adapt to the new conditions? And how can we make sure that this whole thing around, there was a much greater focus on mental health, recognizing that this was really difficult for people. And so what I'm seeing now, actually at that time, we saw a polarization. We saw some leaders and organizations that acted abominably. That it was terrible behavior, very uncaring, very controlling. But I'm always kind of convinced that leaders are doing the best with the level of consciousness that they have at this moment. And so even those who struggled and were acting in very dysfunctional ways, they were just doing the best that they could. But some leaders stood up and just they stepped into their power and became remarkable as leaders. We saw overall that cultures were actually healthier, even though some fears of COVID had arisen, that this number we have, cultural entropy, which is the degree of dysfunction, it came down slightly, this is a fairly significant number from 20 to 17%. And the concerns of bureaucracy and control and hierarchy dropped away, but new concerns came up. Confusion, clearly, where the hell are we? What are we doing? Job insecurity clearly was a fear, and still is a fear for many people. And caution became an emerging fear within this situation. And then we looked at, well, what do people desire? And the most amazing thing was that 6 of the values that the people were experiencing during COVID times, adaptability, agility, teamwork, digital connectivity, balance, and cross-group collaboration, were things that they wanted for the future that they were already experiencing during COVID times. This is a remarkable alignment. We rarely see this between current culture and desired culture. And then in addition to that, what were the new values being requested going forward? Employee engagement, innovation, continuous learning, and open communication. Now, what you might miss in here, because a lot of these words are not so much of the human, caring, compassion side, but all of that was a theme that really was underlying within these more organizational words. So if any of that is interesting and you want more, then that link, and you'll get that through this, valuescentre.com/COVID. The full webinar and all the results are completely available to you. Now, I'd like to because we've got, I think, about half an hour left, and I'm going to introduce the personal values assessment, and then we're going to maybe have 15 to 20 minutes in groups to go and explore a little bit with yours. So I want to come back to the theme that I started with this. We value what we need. And that's why I asked you at the beginning, what do you need? And we'll go and explore that a little bit more through those values. And some people draw this as an iceberg. I choose to draw this as a tree because I think that a tree is much more organic. But what we have that we can see above the surface are our behaviors. And what's just below the surface are our thoughts and our feelings. And what happens is that as we have a thought, we have a feeling, and oh my God, that feels bad. I need to go and do something about that, or I need to go and fix that situation. Those thoughts and feelings very quickly flip over the line and become our behaviors. And do we have enough of a kind of the ability to observe those thoughts and feelings so that we can choose what we want our behaviors to be? Because often those thoughts and feelings are really uncomfortable and difficult things, and they might cause us to lash out and be nasty. Or if we can catch that in that moment and say, okay, I'm having a thought or a feeling that's really uncomfortable now. Who do I choose to be as I address this? Is this something I need to handle for myself, or do I need to handle this in a loving way externally? But beneath that are our values and priorities. And beneath that are our needs either met or unmet. And so needs really are at the core. And so it's important that we are able to go down a little bit deeper and find out what are the values and priorities and what are the needs that sit right underneath that. So the personal values assessment, we've had over 1 million people take this right now, and we made it free in 2012 actually, because we wanted to make this available to everybody to explore this question. What are my personal values? Because my guess at that point was that less than 1% of the world's population had ever been asked the question, what are your personal values? And for some people, it opens a door to a new pathways for life. But 2 quick stories. I heard about a hospice in North America who were using the personal values assessment. They were asking the dying patient to take a personal values assessment. They also asked the care staff to take a personal values assessment. And they sat and talked about what was most important during the dying days of that patient. And what they found was it didn't just transform the relationship between the patient and the care staff. What happened was that relationship became more bonded and caring and loving and understanding. It actually eased the process with the family as well. So the family felt that their loved one was in a more loving, caring situation, and it made it easier for everybody. And so even in a moment of death, we can use this as a process of healing in that moment. One other story I heard, again, in North America, there's an organization called Purple Star who are helping veterans come back from war zones. Many more veterans commit suicide than die in war zones. And they were using the personal values assessment as just a baby step start point for helping veterans understand, well, what's most important to me? Who am I inside? And start to reconnect to that importance so they could start to reconnect to their family and to their community and to the world around them in a new way. And I'm making it sound easy again. My God, that's not easy stuff to go from that sort of suicide feelings to coming back to life, but it's a step along the way. So as I said before, we've done over 1 million. 1 million people have responded to this, and if we look at all the responses and we group them together, you can see it looks like this. So family is the number one thing across the whole world that people value. And then interestingly, humor and fun. People like to be with their family and have a good time with their family. And then caring and respect and friendship. And what a story we could tell about when you connect all these values together. But then what we can do is we can put them into this picture so we can see that. Now, level 2, I'll remind you, is about relationships. So humanity's core personal values show that there's 4 relationship values in there. So being in relationship with each other is really important. And then that level 5 is what we call internal cohesion. What is it that bonds us together? So humor and fun and trust and commitment and enthusiasm and creativity. These are all the things that kind of bond us together so that we can work together in a different way. And then that level 4 value of continuous learning, which is that sense of transformation. So I would just want to repeat one thing. Higher is not better in this model. Your results are just a description of where you are in your life at the moment. And I go up and down depending on what's happening. If I have a health crisis, I'll probably be valuing level 1 things more. If I'm at a moment of transformation in my life, then I'll probably be having more at level 4 going on. And I'm not really worried about any of that. What I want you to focus on is the words within your results. And this is actually mine from very recently. And I'm not going to talk about this too much because I want to give time for you to explore yours. So for those of you who haven't had the chance to do this, maybe you know the words off the top of your head. But otherwise, just maybe take a photograph of this screen or because we're going to move very quickly from this. But I'm hoping most people have had the chance to do this, but just pick 1 or 2 or 3 values from here very briefly. If you've got your results, you don't need to do this bit. I'm going to give you 20 seconds just for anybody who hasn't had a chance so far. And if your word isn't here, this is not a comprehensive list of values. This is, if you've got another word, like mine is peace, it's not on this list. So you can pick any other words that you like. And here's your job. Actually, if you have a camera, take a picture of this screen because you're going to go away into your own working groups, or you can just write these down. So in your groups, I want to explore from your personal values list, what are your top 3 values? And what is that consistent, or has something new emerged for you over the last few months? And then how have those values been fulfilled or not during COVID times? And what are the values and needs and priorities you have for the next few months? So we're going to look back to how things have been, and we're going to look forward into what priorities and values you have for the next few months, at least. I would say let's talk about over the winter and what baby steps you're going to take to embody these. So I hope you've written those down. And if you haven't, it doesn't matter, because you'll be talking with wonderful people about stuff that matters. And it doesn't matter that if you follow the structure or not. But Gina, if it's okay, we can split into our groups now and go and play.
Okay, so just to clarify, are we having 15 minutes, or if we are we having 3 people in a group, because people are still sitting in groups of 3 on the screen here for me to put them in groups, and that 4 minutes each and then a roundup, does that work to come back within 15 minutes?
I think 15 minutes would be perfect. Groups of 3, and then we'll come back and we'll just summarize and close the session.
Okay, great, wonderful.
Yeah.
Open all
Thank
rooms. You. Okay. Okay, I'm resuming recording. Has Phil come back?
I'm here.
Okay, great. Hope I wasn't the last one back. Okay, Phil, how do you want to run the last window of time that we have? Everybody's had hopefully a nice conversation.
Well, you know, we have 8 minutes left, and if anybody needs to go sooner than that, then that's fine. But I really don't have any. I've got one closing thought I'd like to share right at the end, but I don't have any rules for this at all. So if anybody wants to pop with a thought or a question or an insight or a desire or anything, then I just want to leave it open, because as you know, I'm not a rules sort of guy, and I don't really have a particular format for this. So I'm just going to leave a space open.
You're so modest. can I just say that one of the images that came out, and I hope my partner, because there were only two of us, agrees with this, was this image of the chrysalis in this soup before it comes out as a butterfly, and the feeling certainly. Well, I let my partner, as it were, describe what she felt about it, but I certainly feel that if you get shaken up like we did with COVID, then you either go into a little huddle and you just bury yourself alive, or you spring out into something that is a bit frightening, but actually allows you to grasp new opportunities. Everything's shaken up. So there are lots of things that you can latch onto and thrive on them. So that's what I felt, and yeah.
Thank you.
Beautiful. Yeah. Anybody else wants to share?
I have a question for Phil regarding when you do your assessments. Sometimes you have like some part is filled with no words, so there is like part with empty. For example, if I take mine, the base one is empty. Is it? I won't say good or bad, because that I don't think that's really the way of thinking, but what does it mean? How do you explain that? Or is it something that I have to reflect myself?
Oh, okay. Do you mean where there's a level with no value, no dots in there?
Yeah.
Okay. So it's one of three possible reasons. One is a blind spot. So it's something that I'm unaware of and not taking care of at the moment.
Okay.
The next possible reason is that it's an area for development. Sorry, I've just remembered the third. I had a mental block then. I'm going to start again. The first reason is it's completely taken care of. So if I get to a point in my life where all the values are, so for example, I am in a perfect loving relationship, I'm extremely getting on with my family and all those sort of things, then what will tend to happen is those values go away because it's just totally taken care of. I have other priorities. So it could be that a lack of level one would be, I'm in good health and I have enough money, I can afford my mortgage, I know where my next can of baked beans is coming from. And so taken care of. Second is it's a blind spot. I really am unaware of this and I'm not taking care of it. And the third is it's a next area of development. I know that there's something I need to explore or do or be here, but I haven't quite got there yet. So it could be any of those reasons, and it can even be a combination of those.
Okay.
Thank you, Elodie.
Really good. Thanks a lot.
Can I just ask?
Yes, of course you can.
Yeah.
You do.
Sorry, I didn't know whether you could hear me or not. I haven't read your work on it. I've done this assessment before, and I've attended webinars and things. Today, for the first time, it's dawned on me that these colours that you use and the titles that you use, they align with the chakras. Is that intentional?
Very.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then going on to what you just talked about with Elodie, it very much aligns. Yeah, because my number 1 and my number 7 are both empty.
Right.
And that's very interesting in terms of my journey and where I'm at on my journey. So thank you for clarifying that.
So just to say something about the model, when Richard Barrett created this, he started with Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which is really levels 1, 2, 3, 4. And then he expanded Maslow's concept of self-actualization into levels 5, 6, and 7 by using the Vedas, the Indian philosophy. And in fact, what we discovered very soon is that they map perfectly with the chakra system as well, and the energetic vibrations of all the chakras. And so we're using a powerful ancient technology in modern corporations, and often they don't even know it.
It's interesting, Phil, you mentioned about only 1% world population had ever taken, been asked this values question? Is that what you were saying when you started out with
it is my guess. It is because I know that when I ask people in workshops, what are your personal values? Most people have no idea. Like, what is a value even?
Yeah.
Which is why we give a very simple list for people to make that start point. So yes, I think that it's not a common conversation.
No, and I think it's such a valuable one. I do remember, many, many decades ago, sitting in a Tony Robbins workshop. We were sent off late at night to go through these values lists, and I found it the hardest thing I'd ever done.
Yeah.
I couldn't answer the questions, and then I had to prioritize. And we were like half an hour. I felt I wanted to spend weeks on it, and I do often spend quite a lot of time just using that values question. So being forced to do things in 5 minutes is helpful. But it is interesting. I think I found personally our little conversation great, because just the opportunity to share what is important to me, what's important, and where I'm going with that, and then hear somebody else hear a similar thing. These are really precious conversations, and this is the delight of Conscious Cafe and the loveliness of the structure that you've offered, that we can talk about what is important to us in a language, in the language of values, and say that and explore it out loud, out of our heads, and hear somebody else come back and find that we're all using this COVID time as an opportunity for a new start, for a new iteration of ourselves. Maybe not something completely new, but just looking in and thinking, I've had a lot of months to assess where I am in life and what will I do next in the light of a very changing world. So I personally found this morning really interesting and helpful with this simple structure. And I enjoyed my conversation with my colleagues in my room in finding out, where we are very similar.
I noticed the time, and I would like to close with one thought. 4 years ago, I mentioned I went into a burnout breakdown, and I also went to a very suicidal place, and there was no light in my life, and took me a year to get back to the ability just to be able to do basic tasks at work. And I haven't facilitated anything like this since that time in quite this way. And so that hence my fear this morning. Am I good enough to do this? And I want to thank you all for allowing me to take one of my little baby steps out of the chrysalis and coming back into the world. And that means a lot to me. It takes courage for us, whatever parts of our life, to make those steps. And it took me courage this morning. And I thank you for being part of that. And so thank you again.
Bill, thank you. I think everybody on the stream is expressing their gratitude and nodding and waving and sending you love and appreciation for being vulnerable, sharing about yourself. And we didn't have longer to equally share how each of us may be vulnerable in this change. But I also think what you've shared in your personal experience of it helps all of us go forward. And I would recommend that you share this workshop, with people because it's a nice little container for people to go through these important questions of steering us through this big change. And I also say that Richard Barrett did a fantastic summary of his work, didn't he, in June or wherever it was, and it's available on the Conscious Cafe YouTube channel. So Phil, thank you so much. I deeply appreciate your commitment to this work and for showing, being with us today and being willing to lay out for us in such a beautiful way. So thank you again.
Thank you.
And I'm going to draw very quickly in the last 30 seconds your attention to, do go if you need to, but I'm just going to talk about the next events that we've got. We've got Emma Slade, who has spoken at Conscious Cafe before. She is a Buddhist nun. I think I'm right in saying that. Is Judy still here? And she's going to talk about, following so well on from what we've done today, what makes for a good and fulfilling life. It's a beautiful question, and she's going to steer us through that. October the 28th in the evening. Living Without Fear in a Chaotic World. That's a Sunday morning presentation with Tamara Alaroff. She's done them before. That's going to be another beautiful conversation for Sunday morning. And then Jessica Adams. Some of you may have joined the call. That was, she was featured, wasn't she, Judy, in the Daily Mail this week, on Monday's Daily Mail, and we could perhaps when we send out the link for this recording, send out maybe the link for the mail, her prediction. She's a rare astrologer who predicts specific dates. And she did a fantastic overview from astrological terms about what's happening now. She predicted it a year ago to the date. And she's going to talk about next year. So I really encourage you to join us for that, because it's going to be November the 23rd, a morning session. She's based in Hobart, Australia, so it will be in the morning. And do invite colleagues on. We've got a full load of people booked, haven't we, Judy, for that one? You're muted, Judy. Can you? Do I need to unmute? Ask to unmute. Judy, ask to unmute. Can you unmute yourself on your little unmute button? There you go.
We have some great events lined up from now until Christmas, and you can find out more by going on our website. Also, we have our Wellbeing Marketplace on the website, and where we advertise what people at Conscious Cafe offer. And we are on social media, on Facebook and on Twitter. So have a look for us there. And of course, everything we're doing, please share with your friends. And Gina, remember to